Hello, everyone. This is Untitled back again, and I'm glad to report that Jane has joined us, and so we're about ready to begin our webinar. Jane, I hope that you have a moment to be able to prepare yourself, and I'll go ahead and start with a few housekeeping items. So, welcome to all of you who have joined us. We're glad that you have come for Households of Faith with Jane Butcher. And I would like to invite you to be aware of the chat window that's in your upper left-hand corner. That's where you'll be able to post questions and comments for Jane as we go along and to be able to interact. Also, right above me, you see the Webcast for Transformation window where we list all of the different webcasts that are available for you to participate with. Some, there are recordings available since they've already happened. Others will be able um, to schedule, and you'll be able to join us shortly. And then also, if you have technical issues as we have this webinar, then I'll be able to help you if you can write to me in that chat window, and I'll be glad to check. Stan Duick, Director of Transforming Practices with Church of the Brethren, will also be helping me today. But Jane, I'd like to just welcome you, and let's double check your microphone and make sure you can be heard well, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Is everything coming through clearly?
Just perfect. So Jane, if I can, I'll just let you take over, and if you would take a moment to introduce yourself and set the stage, and then just take it away. Thanks.
Well, first of all, my apologies, because I think we may have some time delay issue, because I was expecting that we would start at 7:30 p.m. and here it is 6:30 p.m. So I'm grateful for an email that said, "We're ready to go, are you?" So my apologies if you've been waiting for me this evening. My name's Jane Butcher, and I work for BRF, which is Bible Reading Fellowship. We are the home of many ministries, including Messy Church, and Martin Payne, who spoke last time, covers our work there along with the team. And I work within schools and churches and overseeing our Faith in Homes ministry. And it's that I'm really wanting to share my passion, my heart, and my thoughts about this evening. So do feel free to be typing away, and I will stop and we'll have a chance to dialogue with each other as the evening goes on. Just as an overview, this evening is looking at putting this in context, some of the research that we've done here, but also then considering some of the issues and the pressures that families might face in living out faith in the home. And then getting on to the practical ideas. How can we support and encourage families to live out their faith in the home? What practical ideas could we give them? So just as we get started here, we carried out some research in the UK, and we asked people to just rate things that they felt were being served effectively in their church lives. And so we asked parents and carers, grandparents and church leaders. And what we wanted to know was, did they feel that faith was the responsibility of the church or the parent or the carer, or who was it? And these were some of their responses. We asked who has the most influence on the life of a child. And 244 people said that it was the parent or the carer who had the primary influence upon the life of a child. But we then went on to ask, well, who has the primary responsibility for bringing children up in the faith? And you can see there a clear majority, 249, said that it was the responsibility of the parent or the carer to bring up children in the faith. And I don't know if that surprises you or whether that's what you would expect maybe, but that is a significant responsibility for families alongside all the other aspects of their role, particularly for those who have little experience or knowledge of the Christian faith. But I wonder how that makes you feel. As a parent, as a carer, a church leader, or a grandparent, how does that make you feel? Is that something that you think is a great idea and you look forward to it? Is it something that fills you with fear and dread? Is it something that raises concerns? Just take a minute to think how you might respond to that statement and the information we've heard. And if you do want to type in the interactive box, please do so. I think what we're clearly saying, sorry, Anton, is there a problem?
I wanted to come on and both apologize and alert you. What I've realized is that the U.S. changed to daylight savings time, but evidently the United Kingdom has not yet.
Not yet. No, we've got another couple of weeks yet. So I'm just noticing on those signed in, we don't have anybody from the UK. And that could be because they may join us at what they think is 7 o'clock. So my apologies to everybody that we may be joined by other people partway through. So that's obviously a slight timing thing, but nevertheless, we're all here, and that's great.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with us. So we'll try to deal with, I'll try to greet people who come in later, and we'll make sure we have a recording available. Thank you.
It's absolutely fine. So having given a minute to think about that, I think what we're clearly wanting to say is that this doesn't mean the church does not have a role to play here. It really does. This is about the church and the home working together to provide the best opportunities that we possibly can. What kind of families might we be looking at? That was something we started to explore very early on in our work with Faith in the Home. And we want to talk about families in their broadest sense. So we might be talking about those who attend church regularly, who have quite an understanding and a knowledge of the Christian faith, but are not sure how to live it out in the home. We might be talking about those who are attending church, but have limited knowledge. Or maybe those exploring faith in the later years, or coming through fresh expressions of church, such as messy church. Those experiencing church through the milestones of life, through baptisms, through weddings, through funerals. How might we be able to help them connect with faith in their daily lives? And families with parents of differing faiths. And I don't know how much that would be a part of your work with your families, but certainly here in the UK, and I live in a city, that's something that we're very aware of, is how do we work with families sensitively, with understanding, for parents with differing faiths. And we don't want to just think about the biological family, the family living under one roof. We're talking here about the extended family and the vital role that the church family can play in this. There's a well-known African proverb that says it takes a whole village to raise a child. And is that something we're familiar with within our churches? Or is that something we aspire to? Or something that's never really crossed our minds there? We're talking about the family being the body of Christ, including those who are single, those who are separated, divorced, widowed. What might they play? What might their role be in terms of supporting families and encouraging them to live out faith? I know of a number of families here who have embraced people into their family life, and they would say that their relationship is far richer because of that. And I think that's something I would echo from my own experience. I think this is particularly true in the teenage years, where maybe that parent-child relationship changes and the value of those outside relationships becomes even more important. And maybe that's something we just need to be aware of here. And I wonder for your church whether that's something that already happens. If it is, please do feel free to let me know. It'd be great to hear what's happening in other situations and being able to share them with one another so that we can kind of all benefit from that. So acknowledging that this is the responsibility of the parent or the carer, how might we think about developing spirituality in the home? I think the first thing I'd want to say is that we need to understand that faith in the home isn't measurable. It's not about success or failure. What I want parents to understand is that they may not see any signs of faith developing in their children, but a lot can be happening internally that isn't seen or expressed, and that doesn't mean that they're failing. I think one of the things that we are maybe caught up in now is the assessment of children, whether that be through their own physical development or emotional or their educational development. But spirituality is not something that we can necessarily measure. And that's the same for adults as it is for children. I don't know about you, but I've often had times when I'm working through things spiritually and it's mainly internal. And maybe children can be doing the same and we don't see any external signs, but it doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on. And we need to wait for those moments of opportunity to pick up on any questions or any issues that they might be facing. We took our research a little further and we wanted to go a bit deeper and ask parents and carers, what are the challenges that you face in your daily lives and in your spiritual lives that impact the way that you can live out your faith at home? And we asked them to really be honest and share exactly what they wanted to. And I wonder if any of you have just got any ideas what they might have said. Again, if you have, please feel free to type that in and we'll stop and take those. What were the key challenges that they expressed in terms of living out their faith in the home? Just give you a minute maybe to think about what your families would answer to that question. Okay, we've got time commitments there from Stan. If anybody's got any other thoughts, issues that their families face.
Jane, we're beginning to see some people starting to type in responses. So Anna has typed in, when we have precious time together, we want to relax and not think too hard. We're still waiting for Andy as he's typing, and perhaps some others are wanting to share as well what they see as challenges or what they feel that you've discovered.
I think that point there about having precious time together, and when you've got that time, you want to just sit and collapse and think about how are we just going to spend time together. And I think that's a very valid point. And seeing Andy's point there, that adults may not be prepared to answer the questions. And that is something we're coming across here quite a lot. It won't surprise you, I don't think, to see that these are going to be picked up in what we're talking about there. Stan, do you have any other comments that you were thinking there?
Well, I was wondering, is there a difference, say, between like the adults in the household? Do women feel differently than men about forming and having those conversations of faith?
That's a very interesting point. I'm really interested to hear what others feel on that before I kind of give an answer, because I think that is a very interesting point that we need to be aware of. And again, with what Enton's just typed in here, parents may not know the faith well enough, feel secure to pass on faith.
Yeah.
So I'll share with you the ideas that came through for us, and they probably won't surprise you in the slightest. The key ones were having enough time. By far and away, that is the comment we hear time and time again. Having enough time, having the family together. Even when we are together, maybe we're in a rush, Maybe you this evening have had to juggle things tonight to be able to get here in time. It's just about juggling time. People struggling to have the ideas to use, not sure how to do this. Children not interested, so they're not wanting to connect with faith or talk about it. And I wonder if sometimes that's the case for us as adults as well, when we're exhausted at the end of a week and we just want to collapse. I wonder if that could be true. And a sense of failure, and that really intrigued me. And so I want to know a little bit more on that and asked if people could explain that. And they were saying things like, I feel I'm just starting my faith story and I don't know the stories. And that was picked up there, obviously. Feeling I have failed, I don't want to appear to be hypocritical. And that came through a number of times. Those that maybe felt that either in their spiritual life or in their daily life, and some in terms of marriages, felt that they'd failed and therefore they might be hypocritical by exploring and talking about faith. And the different learning styles. The different learning styles there. Some said boys were more active, and others said that girls were more craft orientated. That's not always the case. But I think it's finding the right doorway into talking about and exploring faith. And I think that's going to be a key part as we follow on from here. So what might we look at as some possible foundations to bringing some kind of strategy into being as we work with families? And if there are other challenges, do feel free to post them as we go along. The things we're hearing are families need to know that we care about their everyday lives, not just their spiritual lives, so that holistic well-being. So when they're coming into contact with us on a Sunday morning and we say, how are you? They know that we genuinely care, that we genuinely are asking that question because we want to support them. We need to encourage the idea that faith is a journey together as a family, picking up on a comment made there. No previous experience is necessary. This is a journey of adults and child alongside one another. I think sometimes as adults we feel that we've got to know all the answers. And actually sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know, what do you think? And allowing children to express their opinions not only tells them that they're valued, but is part of them forming their own beliefs and taking ownership for their faith. And often the things that I learn from children are far greater than anything I ever share, because they have a richness, they have a different perspective, and they often don't come with the reservations and maybe the baggage that we might do as adults. We need to engage and encourage at the appropriate level of an individual's Bible knowledge and Christian understanding, so that we don't make assumptions or judgments. When we provide ideas here through our website and our Facebook page, we don't assume that people will know the Bible stories. If you're going to send home a take-home sheet for families to use together, we often say a summary of the Bible story is really valuable, because for many families here, they may not know how to read a Bible. And for some families, they may not even have a Bible. So having a summary or giving them a website that they can access is quite important. And therefore, we can begin to develop at the right level for them. We found that, not surprisingly, families and church leaders are looking for ideas that won't take a lot of time or money. And it's for that reason that we suggest it's about finding God in the everyday, finding and exploring faith in the existing routines of the day. I don't know about you, but I think if I said to my families to do faith in the home, you've got to set another 2 hours aside to do a Bible study, I would lose them, because they haven't got the time. They don't know where to start. They want some creative ideas. So we need to be reassuring families that they're doing a lot already in their daily lives. And where can they look to see that faith is a key part of that? So, for example, walking to school in the morning, what could they see and explore around them that speaks of faith, that speaks of God's creation, so that it actually becomes a natural process? And we need to offer differentiation according to age, gender, and experience. And it is an ongoing journey. What works with an under 5 will be very different when they get to 9 or 10. And once you get into the teenage years, it will start to change significantly again as life patterns start to change and as the way that we engage starts to change. I'm just going to pause there for a minute because I can see we've got some comments coming in there here. Stan is saying we talk while driving, and that's a really good point. And again, we're going to pick up on that, particularly with teenagers and how we engage with them. But that's a really good opportunity, and do feel free to share others as well that you have experienced or you've heard of that families might be doing together. Most importantly, what we're hearing parents and carers saying here would be that faith and church needs to connect with daily life. We need to recognise where families are at and the issues that they face. So I've just listed a few here. How does it work out when you're in the early years with sleep deprivation, when you're exhausted and on your knees? What does it mean to then live out faith? How can we support families there? The toddler tantrums, that stage that many of us have probably walked through, or we know of other people who have walked through it. And what does that mean for family life? Those facing the pressures of education, certainly something that's very competitive and a lot of pressure upon our children and our teenagers today in terms of their coursework and their exams. The teenage years, well documented, but where does faith connect with families living through the teenage years? And the whole area of peer group relationships, when we get into that situation of all my friends are doing, and it doesn't fit with what we do as a family. And relationships, when we get into the whole area of relationships, that can be peer group relationships at school, at church, at work. Those relationships that we find difficult can be quite a challenge at times. But what about when we get into personal relationships, emotional relationships, and the impact that can have on family life? Finance and the loss of jobs and the pressure there, divorce, death, and I'm sure you can think of many others there that are a pressure. I'm just going to take a moment because I can see some people that have responded there. And Anna saying that there's a great one where the car can be a place where things are focused without the TV and the phone. And I think that is an important thing. Coming back to films and television, we'll be coming back to that as well, but that's valuable time that we can spend together. So I wonder if you would add any more there to the stages of life where you feel that faith really needs to connect with families.
Jane, we see Andy has added simple service projects together that families can do. I'm aware of one congregation where they emphasized building service projects into the life of the congregation, and they would work with organizations that would only permit the allowance of children to work along with their parents in those kinds of activities, and that was a wonderful thing for them.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
I think
I was in Anna has also commented that movies or television shared together can also be a wonderful experience to engage around. There are conversations, even have you found the use of technology, just introducing or talking with the children or teenagers as they're growing up, and how to use technology? Do parents take that time and what that can allow and permit in terms of faith formation kinds of conversations?
I think that's a very significant point here, because there is a danger that we see technology as being a real negative of something that's into family life. And in many situations, it could be that. But there are times when it can actually be quite bad. And I think spending that time with children and with young people is something that's a significant shared experience. I've heard it said recently that we as adults are digital immigrants, whereas our children and young people are digital natives. This is the world that they've grown up in. They know no different. It's only for those of us that are older that are having to adapt to the new technology that's coming on. The whole idea that mobile phones didn't always exist is a little bit of a challenge for children, and that they didn't have them in Bible studies. So I think that's right. I think another point is asking children and young people for their opinions on technology. If you've got a computer problem or a mobile phone problem, the first person I would turn to would be a young person, because I think their knowledge and their expertise is far greater than mine. But it says to them, well, we respect them. And I think there's a key looking at that as a foundation for faith, because the relationship element is really quite important here. We'll just move on a little bit to some of these, which is people are already ahead of the game and thinking. So we're looking at disconnect. Sorry, Stan, go on.
I was just going to just say I'm going to step away so you can continue with your presentation and continue to lead us forward. This is wonderful things we're hearing.
So acknowledging that we want to connect with daily lives, how are we going to do this? And a lot of what we've been talking about here is about finding God in the everyday. And I apologise if something's gone out of sync there, but that's we'll be coming to that. So how might we give some practical ideas to families to find God in the everyday, the things they're already doing? We've touched on this, the teenagers, the taxi service, for those parents or carers who feel that all they ever do is drive their teenagers around now from one place to another. But actually this is really a good opportunity for talking about things. And as Stan mentioned earlier, that's when a lot of the talking takes place. There's no eye contact when we're driving, and that's easier for a lot of teenagers. It's easier for them to talk maybe when we're both staring at the open road in front of us. And it's about trying to make the most of those opportunities. That might be what we've just talked about, asking if you were going to buy a mobile phone now or a cell phone now, what would you buy? And asking them their opinion. But it could also be some of the deeper conversations that are very much faith related. And it's about taking the opportunity to step in through the door of conversation when it's open. And that might not be at the ideal time. I've heard a number of families talking about the fact that they're just going to bed at night. And a child, a teenager, a young person comes in and says, can I just ask you something? And everything within the adult might be thinking, I'm shattered. But that's the time, if we can, to stop and have those conversations, because that's when they're ready to talk and ready to share. And we can say we'll leave it to the morning, but the chances are that that moment's gone by the morning. So how can we make the best of those opportunities? Likewise, if you're driving home from somewhere and you're in a deep conversation, if you then pull onto the driveway and go into the house, the moment may be lost, can we take the opportunity to go to our favourite fast food restaurant and just spend some time together, talking and sharing. Keep in touch with a child or a young person's world. What kind of comics, magazines are they reading? What TV programs are they watching? Who is having an influence on them? And that goes back to a very young age. Even preschool children who are taken by TV programs and things that they are coming across. That's what's influencing their lives. And the same as time goes on and we get to the teenage years and they're reading different kind of magazines and they're watching different kinds of TV programs. But it's worth just being engaged with their world. Connect with the times and seasons. And I've just shared an example here of loom bands. And I don't know if you were part of the group that experienced this craze. Certainly here in the UK last summer, this was a really big craze for us. And families with children of all ages, both boys and girls, were taking to loom bands. And we wrote some very simple ways to pray using loom bands, and they're on the website if you do want to look at them after, and I'm going to give the website address. But those were really popular, and it was just a way of offering something that was current. It didn't take time, they weren't expensive, but it enabled families to pray together in a new and a creative way. So can we be open to creativity as situations arise? Thinking about things currently now, the film Frozen, which has just captured the hearts and lives of so many children, young people and adults. How might we be watching Frozen and exploring some faith issues and faith questions? And again, there's some ideas there on the website and on the Facebook page. And there's 2 lines towards the end of that film that summarise the Easter story. And is that something that we could share together? Because some families find talking about Easter quite difficult with children. What does it mean? What does sacrifice mean? And there's some lines in Frozen that help us to do that. Do share other examples as well as we go, and we will pause and take those at the same time.
We want to give some time to people to share some of their thoughts of what they're doing. One other thing that comes to mind is in our community, I'll see a number of children walking with parents, for a day, for exercise. And my wife and daughter do that as well. And that has become a space for conversation. And it fits into the day of the calendar. So there's a lot, I think, Jane, what you're helping us to see is that if we are intentional about it, we can carve out those times to have conversations about faith and life and how and maturity and so forth for both adults and children and youth.
I think you're right. Doing. How do we just integrate faith into that and that kind of thing, so that we're not asking them to create more time and we're not asking them to know all the answers. It's what you're saying about your wife and your daughter being in dialogue together and having the opportunity for communication.
It raises a question that comes to mind. Have out of our lifestyles, have we become so connected to our habits? In other words, that we function out of habit, that we function out of habit so much that we lose focus or attentiveness to those kinds of opportunities.
I think you're right, because our lives have become so busy and so crowded, and I think that can be an issue in itself, that sometimes we are so focused on all the things we need to do that we have got these routines, but we're always thinking, I've got to do this next or that next, and I think we can become bogged down, and rather than seeing, actually, we've got some really good foundations here, they're already in place, how can we make the most of them?
Are
I think,
are
go
there
ahead, Stan.
okay? Are there? I was watching looking for some other comments and not seeing any right now, but I was wondering what are some in a sense, some strategies or pieces of advice that you give to adults in terms of ways to create those times for just for themselves to slow down so they can even begin to perceive and find those times in order to create that with their children and other family members.
You're right, because I think our lives have become so busy as adults. And that I heard somebody today talking about what's the difference between a day off and the Sabbath. And somebody saying a day off is when we stop working and stop what we normally do. A Sabbath is a time when we take time to reflect. And maybe we've stopped doing that now. Maybe we need to consciously create some time. We sometimes call it me time, but it's almost me and us time. How do I think about us as a family unit, whatever that looks like? And I think that's important.
Anton makes a comment. He says, it seems that a lot of this is trying to work against the way culture has changed around us in being too busy, not having time. And
Absolutely right. There.
Well, Jane, I'm going to step aside so you can continue, and we can come back a little later for some more questions and responses.
That's great. And again, picking up on what's already in our lives, TV we sometimes see as being an issue, but they can offer they can touch on issues and open up a door of conversation there. And that can be soaps, it can be films, it can be all kinds of things there. This is picking up on something that Stan was just mentioning, creating family time, setting aside some uninterrupted time. It can be fun-based. You could have a meal together, do a fun activity, watch a film, and it connects to a faith element. I worked in the States a number of years ago, and this was something I came across there. And found families were taking family time set aside when it was ring-fence time almost. If somebody got an invite to go somewhere else, then the answer was no, we have something already in the diary. And there were no phones, no mobile phones, nobody on iPads or tablets of any nature. And maybe adults find that as challenging as children, but the benefits are quite significant. And I think it can be that something we set in place as early as we can in life, even when they are preschool, that we set a time family time, because that will help us to establish some foundations there. And I think Sean's picked up on that. Play has a place in this, where families can play together and they relax and enjoy being together. And I think that, again, is key in this family time and beyond that we do have time when we can just kind of relax together. And we've looked there at where can the Bible give some insight into daily issues. One of the key ones that we come across is relationships. And if we look into the Bible, looking at the story of David and Saul and Jonathan, what can we learn from the Bible that connects into those relationship issues? So families seeing that the issues they face are actually there in the Bible, and that people are able to gain and learn from Scripture there. Please do share if you've got other things that you feel are beneficial, or experiences that you've heard in terms of families engaging together. I'm just going to pause so that if people do want to make comment, they can do so. Yep, some great comments coming in there. Jacob and Esau, Cain and Abel, Rachel and Leah. I think sometimes we forget that there were the issues in Bible times that we face today, and helping our families to see that to see that they are not the only ones going through this is a real assurance for them. Yep, Mary and Martha, Ruth and Naomi. And the Mary and Martha story is one that speaks to so many different situations. And if you've got other suggestions of other issues that families might face and how you might connect with those, please feel free to share those as well. Yes, classic teenager one there from Enton. Jesus and his mom. I'm presuming you mean in the temple, when they visited the temple. And I often wonder and explore with children, what do we think his mom might have really been feeling when she got to him, and what might she have said, and would those two things have been the same, and how that might have impacted their relationship onwards. So I think there are some key things there that are important to look at. And just to share some other things, just an idea that happened to me a few months ago. I was with a family who have a boy aged 14, and he was quite active, and he was struggling to engage with the Bible story. But the minute we did a challenge, and the father brought in a plate full of food and covered it, and we each had to wear a blindfold and taste the food and say what food it was and where in the Bible that would be found. And that really captured the attention of all of the children and all of the adults in a fun way, in a creative way, and allowed us to be really stretching our thinking in terms of Bible knowledge. And it was a really fun opportunity to do that. So that's just a suggestion of how things can develop there. And just moving on a little bit further here, in terms of films, there are some suggestions here, because I find a lot of families feel that this is an accessible way in for those that come in after a busy week and they're just exhausted. You do want to relax together, but there are ways in which you could watch a film together and explore some of those kind of issues that we see. So maybe grab your popcorn, your chocolate, your favourite snacks, and here are just some ideas here if you've not seen them. For younger children, the film Up contains a lot of material there on relationships. Ice Age 1 and 2, Monsters University, Frozen I've mentioned already this evening, and Prince of Egypt. And the websites that I've included there actually give you some questions that families could explore together, so they don't have to be thinking of them themselves. For older children, some of the films that seem to be popular, Narnia, the classic Narnia films about sacrifice and Easter and commitment and love. Skyfall, a recent one there. The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded. And Hunger Games. Now, I'm coming across a mixture of opinions on that one. And some people feel that it's very beneficial, and some feel that they have some reservations. So I would encourage families to look at those first before they do that. And that takes me on to how we actually encourage families to know what is appropriate for children. I often get asked the question here, along with my colleagues who get asked the same. My child wants to read, or my child wants to see such and such a film, should I let them? And I feel that it's appropriate for us to be giving families the skills and the confidence to make their own judgment. And there are a number of websites available, but certainly there's one called commonsensemedia.org/reviews, and that's a US website that looks to support families in this area. So they will review books and films, computer games, and just give some kind of guidance. What's included? What's the material suitable for? What ages is it suitable for? And I would encourage families to use that so that they can have a look at it and make an informed decision in terms of whether they feel their children, young person, teenager should be engaging with these things. So that's one I would certainly recommend to you. And if you've got any other websites or resources that you feel that you've come across, please do share them, because the more we can share together, I think the better there. Before I pause, just to kind of allow people to make some final comments there, I've just included a website here. This is the website that I've referred to, faithinhomes.org.uk. And we update that with new ideas. Everything on there is free to download. There's also a Facebook page, and not surprisingly, it's Faith in Homes, and we post on there regular things. So at the moment, if you went on, you could pick up ideas for families to use on Lent and Easter, on Frozen, a lot of other ideas there, and we signpost to other organisations. So if you can make benefit of those or make use of those, please feel free to do so, and please feel free to pass that information on. But I'm just going to pause and ask if there are any questions or comments people would like to make as we draw together here.
Jane, we're going to make the information accessible to folks. We're going to create a PDF, and Enton's actually going to get it posted in the next few minutes. We're going to make that attempt. If not, my email address is in the chat box above, and you can, if you want copies of Jane's slides with the information, just email me at sduick@brethren.org, and we'll make sure you get a PDF copy of the slides so you can get access to all this great information. Sean writes, makes a comment that the family loves film nights. Are there other things perhaps that we're missing? You mentioned loom bands earlier. Say a little more about that so we have an idea of what that is, especially in the U.S. And then are there other ways in which crafts and art and the arts can open up ways for dialogue?
Certainly. Loom bands, if you've not come across them, are small coloured bands made of elastic that join together to make effectively a friendship bracelet. And we suggested just different ways of using those. So we suggested that you could use 3 colours, and that could represent Trinity. We suggested that maybe for a child who was apprehensive about going back to school, we had 3 colours. One represented them, one represented their them and care for them and would pray for them, and one represented God, so that they would know that wherever they were, there were people praying for them, their family and friends, and that God was with them. And they could either wear or in their school bag. And maybe we suggested for Remembrance Sunday here, Memorial Sunday, having a white loom band as a sign of peace and our prayers for those who serve. So different creative ways, and there were others suggested as well, that people could use with loom bands. Using crafts is something we use a lot within Faith in Homes. If we use a craft to open up a Bible story, for a lot of families that makes it more accessible. So if you've got an active child, maybe you could build the walls of Jericho in your house using cardboard boxes or using anything you've got that's safe, and then you knock in a safe environment, and you can read the story together, and that means that we've opened up an opportunity for families to engage. Food is another great one. Making sandwiches out of different shapes. So if you look at Noah's Ark, can we use animal cookie cutters to cut out either cookies or cut out sandwiches, share together and have a picnic before looking at the story of Noah's Ark? So just simple ways there that we can do that, but there are a number of items on the website that you could get from it.
Sean has a question. Have film nights replaced story times? And I kind of have a question related to that. Is have adults lost the capacity to be storytellers?
That's a very good point, because how familiar are we now with sitting and doing the bedtime story? I wonder if film have replaced that, or maybe TV in general, or tablets, and how can we embrace that a really positive way? And I think that's a good point, to make.
Does in terms of the your ministry and your involvement with families, do you have some suggestions in terms of helping people to take stories, those narratives out of Scripture, and find ways to, in a sense, weave them almost as what they call storing the gospel? The Okie in me kind of slurs that Y, but the storing of the gospel in ways to bring stories together that fit situations that they can draw people into and engage them in those stories in those times.
I think, in a sense, it's being creative. And I think one of the things I would say is, someone is starting out, choose a version of the Bible that is right for your group, so that you've got stories that are written in a language that children will understand. Take some adventure. So even if you're reading the story straight from the Bible, from a children's Bible, if you can bring yourself to put in the voices, change the characters, bring it to life, have an action, something that just becomes a connection point, I think is absolutely right. And how do we turn it into story? And if we allow ourselves to be creative, if children are old enough, get them to read the story, allow them to get into character and put on special voices, and then talk about how it does connect. And that's all about the confidence to be creative.
Jane, if we could just allow Enton to have a moment here, and also as we get ready to close out our webinar for the day, I'm noticing that we are getting several people checking in from the UK, and no one's to blame for this but me. I thought I had made the check on the time change, and I failed to do so, and so I apologize to you. We will make the slides available to anyone that's interested. Enton has the download prepared, so you can access it here, and we will have the recording of this webinar up as soon as possible and sent out. And so my apology for this error of communication with time. But Enton, if you'll come on and just come on stage and just share some of the wrap-up information that we need in order to, before we bring our time to a close.
Thanks, Dan. Jane, Stan, stay with us. I'll just make this very quick and then turn it back to you for more questions.
We lost Enton here, at least the sound, and there are two polls in front of you, and one is how helpful was the presentation, and so we invite you to respond to the poll, and then also how well did you like the webinar format. And this it helps us as we continue to evaluate this ministry, and it gives us some insight as to things that are working that you as participants find very helpful as we continue to offer these websites. And then also, you see in the middle of your screen, you can click on the link for the CEUs, and for those in the Church of the Brethren that are looking for continuing education credit, if you go there, you can click on the link and fill out the form for that and submit it. Jane, while people are doing that, there are a couple comments and questions, and Gita says she was bounced a little bit by some of the weather we're having. But she has a comment about films that when her children were younger, there were times they wanted to share a film with them that might have some parts that were questionable. I would hand out tablets and pencils to all my family members, and the instructions were, if you hear something inappropriate, list it. As part of our discussion, we would include why those events and words were used. And Gail adds, a great idea, Gita. Better to engage and discuss rather than to ignore and gloss over it. Invite you to respond to that.
I think that's a very good point. I think that's a really good suggestion there, and as Gail says, that's a really good way of doing things, because I think we do need to be discussing these things together rather than glossing over it or ignore it when it gets to the tricky parts. I think we need to have that open conversation, that open dialogue.
It tends to, if we don't, I think kids are so perceptive, they begin to see faith in another way and don't see all the dimensions of what it means to be people of faith. And so that is a wonderful idea. And several people have acknowledged it as well. Well, Jane, we have now gone to an hour, and so I want to just ask you if there are any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to make based on your presentation and also the questions and comments that have been made today.
I think the key thing I would say as we close is that a lot of families are open to this. To living out faith in the home. It is often us reassuring them that they can do it, that this is a journey together, and we do want to reassure them that they can find their faith in the things they're already doing in their families' lives. So those words of Deuteronomy about passing on the faith as we go about our daily tasks, that we long that would be an encouragement for the families that we work with. And I just hope that if people can take anything from what's been done and use that, then please feel free to do so.
Stan, you are muted, so you might want to unmute.
Right, I forgot. Jane, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing such wonderful insights into how we can share faith in our homes and with our both immediate and extended families, and some many wonderful practical ideas and insights that you have shared. And thank you for the ministry that you do, and also for the time that you've given to prepare this presentation and to share it with us. And again, my apology for the time lapse. And so, but thanks for just coming into the setting of this room and being able to share with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to our next webinar. This was the fourth of the 6 webinars on family-themed content, and we will be having our next webinar on March 24th on an urban-based theme. And that is with Anna Reddick, and she will be presenting on the area of life and transformation in communities. And so we thank you one and all for being with us today, and we wish you well and God's blessings. And that brings our webinar to a close for the day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.